Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me in the next One Piece review and discussion. We are up to chapter 1090 now. We are so close to the 1100 mark. It is crazy how far we have come. So, without further ado, chapter 1090 Admiral Kizaru. So we've got a whole title dedicated to this man. So you know something big's going to happen. But cover story request kind of coincides with the Netflix show, actually. It's Captain Kuro. You know, way back when he's now reappearing, reading with some black cats. You know, just chilling on a window ledge as he does. Doesn't have his claws with him. Just simply reading in the night. But a nice little nod to obviously when he's going to show up in the Netflix series, which is kind of cool. But before we get into it, where we left off last chapter was York was talking to the Gorosei. She was transponding all the way to Marijois. We had like Kizaru and St. J. Garcia listening in. Other like Marines and other people were listening in. Morgans was listening in, and York was explaining about, you know, the fleet they've sent this thing that would put a Buster Call to shame that's surrounding the island, talking about, you know, we need to strike a new deal, save me, you know, as long as you keep me alive in the power plant, then I can reproduce the Mother Flame for you. And towards the end of the discussion, she's like, oh, and by the way, you need to save me from Luffy. And we ended with everyone in the command room up in the labo phase with York chained up. Usopp was holding the transponder snail. Zoro had a sword to her throat, and everyone was just kind of doing their own thing and listening in. And they were all now like, okay, this makes sense. Now we know what's happening. We know what the plan is outside. Like, we just need to escape, basically. So we immediately start with Luffy just picking up the transponder saying, yeah, I'm Monkey D. Luffy, and I'm going to be king of the pirates. Just announcing to the Garo, say, yeah, this is me, going to be king of the pirates. We're in alliance with Vegapunk. You know, if you care about York's safety, yeah, you'll withdraw your fleet. So, actually, quite a very direct approach from Luffy, a very smart one. Normally, you'd say the introduction, obviously, as that like running joke, and then sort of say maybe something silly, but very strategically was like, yeah, we've got an alliance with Vegapunk, and if you want York then to be alive, you're going to let us leave this island. And we've got like Kizaru and like a lot of the Marines being like, whoa, like big call here coming from him, you know, can they actually get away with this all? And Morgans is listening in, like, whoa, what is this we're hearing now? And Vivi and Wapple over here, and she's like, is that Luffy? Like, what's he saying? But the Gorosei being as high up in the world government as they are, because still no one knows really about Eam other than now the revolutionaries, and Wappo probably hasn't revealed to these two about Eam. So they're still the reigning world leaders, so very diplomatic. They sit in their room, they make the decisions, so they seem very controlled and saying like, oh, so right, you're Straw Hat then, so who else is alive with you in the lab phase? And he's like, oh, well, if you're counting the injured, then our numbers. And then it cuts off, and you hear someone be like Luffy, like, shut up. And the younger guy, Jupiter, is like, sounds like a woman's voice. That could be Nico Robin. And they immediately hang up the transponder snail, and we can see Nami's just like upset reaction. Usopp is like furious. And it's like, we can't go giving the information to them. They can't learn about us and what's happened. And we see that Robin, who was missing in the last chapter, was in the room with them all, but she is heavily injured. She is like bandaged, like bloodied, like she is just sort of like sat down in a chair, like recuperating. She is in no fit state, what it looks like. So she, in the course of that night, has gone up and just like got absolutely battered, but has come out of it. The Straw Hats have won, but she's not in any state to continue fighting, that it looks. And Luffy's now realizing, like, oh, my bad. I just thought it would make them, like, withdraw the fleet. But you don't understand the Marines' power here. So we cut over to St. J. Garcia, a very well-drilled individual. And he seems there are three things that we must prioritize. The first is the physical safety of York now. With this arrangement and York's decision and about the Mother Flame as like their ultimate goal, York is now top priority. Second is Punk record. So the massive dome on the Labosphere, Vegapunk's brain, they want to keep that intact because of the information it actually holds. And then he said the third is the power plant itself on the island that helps produce the Mother Flame. Everything else is just expendable. No one really cares. And we have our Vice Admiral in the room saying, you know, well, Rob Lucci's on there, you know, the CP0 squads are there, all the other agents that were captured, like, what's going to happen to them? And he's like, well, we're just considering the worst possible scenario, but we must prioritize those three things. Because Jay Garcia is like, humans are no different from insects. You know, they'll just come back and they'll just multiply. They'll be fine. So our gentleman's like, oh, yes, sir. Because you can't say no to a Garashay. So York's still crying, but is now saying, look, you heard what you just heard there. I've made a deal with the 5 Elder Stars, you know. You can't hurt me. If I'm dead or I'm any more wounded in any way, they'll just eradicate this island, you know. They, just like they did to O'Hara, and just immediately Nami's just like gets the climb attacked out and just starts like laying into her, like don't even dare. And Robin's the one just being like, look, she's unarmed, just don't worry about it. Very composed. And Chopper's like, are your wounds healing all right, Robin? And we see a shot now of everyone in the room now together. So we see like Nami's just still trying to lay into York, and Zoro's the one trying to pull her back. Robin saying, you know what, like, thanks to you, Chopper, yeah, I'm actually doing all right. We've got Luffy and Jewelry Bonnie stacking up for the fight, you know, just eating. Vegapunk's there with his backpack, and he's like, you know, just sort of like lingering around the room. We see Kaku is also like severely injured, and he says he faced off against 2 Seraphim, and you know, I'm still ashamed of myself. And like Lucci's like, you know what, like, I know how you feel, but forget about it, get some rest, you know. You did all right, you fought 2 Seraphim and you're not dead, so fair play. And then Lilith is like bawling, like crying, and she's like, Shocker, Pythagoras, Edison, they're all dead. And like Edison's like, no, I'm still alive, Lilith. But it confirms Shaka and Pythagoras died. Which, in the grand scheme of things, they were like just robots that Vegapunk could probably just rebuild if he wanted to. But I understand the pain, you know, they were satellites together, they were Vegapunks. But we saw Shocker got his head blown off. So no surprise he hasn't recovered. Pythagoras survived the initial explosion because he became the little head. But what then happened? Oh, you know, he got crushed by S-Snake. I was like, oh, he survived. He was a head, so I wonder how he died. But no, we saw at the very end of the fight when S-Snake had most of them petrified. She just crushed his head, and there was that giant explosion. So that's how he died. Weird, I only just remember that now. But they're saying, like, you know, Lilith, you need to just calm down. Usopp's trying to, like, get the comms working again. And we see someone commenting, saying that, you know, for the state of the Vegapunks, 4 of them are, like, injured. 2 of them are dead. As for the Straw Hat, and Kaku's like, yo, like, Lucci, who are you talking to? And he's like, oh, I'm just talking to myself. Lucci is reporting, obviously, to the Marines, or Kizaru, or J. Garcia. He is feeding them intel somehow. Wonder if it's through Karu. just like a little bug in the pigeon, just like he communicates through. But he's somehow got a line there, and he's feeding the information that the Marines need. So even though for the evening he maybe helped out Luffy just to survive, it meant that he could now be in this position where he could feed the information to them about how their injuries are, their numbers, what everyone's like morale is. But Usopp gets the comms working, and it's like, yo, everyone down there, like, are you okay? Everything all right? And we go back down to the basement where all the CP agents are like just in sheer jubilation, just eating loads of food and just saying like, the Straw Hats, they're not enemies. They saved us. We're just so thankful. And then we get two of them commenting like, oh, but can you do us a favor? Can we move somewhere else? Because we don't want to be around these creatures. And we cut over to the other side of the room where the four Seraphim are in those bubbles. So they're encased in these bubbles. Jinbei, Kuma just sort of like very stoically like sat. Mihawk's like kicking around saying like, how dare they lock us up in here? So bit of an attitude. And Snake is just sort of sat, sort of just like reeling with the fact. And they're worried about these Seraphim, aren't they? Like the allies. And Vegapunk's like, oh, you don't have to worry about them. Those bubbles are what the Pacifista Mark III use. So the new Pacifistas, they are bomb blast resistant. They also have the properties of sea prism stones. So any devil fruits are just like nullified in there, And then Snake is commenting saying, we're not here to deal with you guys. We have our orders. They were never to eliminate you. You've got no cause for concern. So, sort of like very nice from Snake. And they're like, oh, okay, well, kind of a relief. And through the video transponder, Frankie's like, oh, so like, we need to just thank you though, Snake, thank you for undoing the petrification on us. And Vegapunk's like, that's still strange though. Like, I don't remember programming it to act like that. And we get a first flashback of what happened during the night. And at some point, Luffy interacted with Snake, but Luffy being Luffy just thought it was Hancock, and just as like, Hancock, they're my friend, you need to help them, you need to undo your powers, please, you're the only one that can save them. And exactly like Hancock would, she's like, stop staring at my eyes, okay, I'll do it, leave me alone. And Jinbei's just like, just like Hancock, still loves Luffy. She is the perfect copy of it, She has those emotions. And Vegapunk's like, fascinating. So the emotions from like the lineage factor have like carried through from Boa to now Snake. So it can be assumed that all of the Seraphim have the same ideals and emotions that their original user had. So Jinbei could eventually become very similar to Jinbei's morality and like outlook on life and how he supports Luffy. Crocodile could easily be like Crocodile's view of the world. Same for Doflamingos, Gekomorias. They seem to be like, could cause a lot of trouble later down the line, and they follow their orders, but they still have part of the personality of those individuals. So something that Vegapunk never thought was possible, but seemingly was transferred during the lineage factor process. But Luffy's like, oh, thanks again, Hancock, and she's starting to like blush. And Atlas, who's like still beaten up, but like it looks to be in fine condition, like working away, saying she can't open up the Frontier Dome. She's trying to work. And Vegapunk's like, well, we can't get out of here. We need to like disable this barrier. And York's like, well, I password protected it, because that's what you got to do. You got to password protect everything, just to be sure. And she says it's useless. You'll never guess the password. And I didn't upload it to the Punk records to your brain for the reason why, like, only I know. So it's another reason to keep me alive. So not only does the world government want me to protect me, but now I have a password so you can't. And Lilith is like furious, like, I'm going to kill you. But Stussy's reporting in to Vegapunk saying, right, well, there's 1,000 ships, nearly 30,000 Marines. Sanji's like infatuated, giving him a cup of tea at this time. And Vegapunk's like, yeah, the situation's quite dire. Who's the navigator? Nami, it was you, wasn't it? And she's like, yeah. Pulls up the log pose, and he says, well, we haven't got a new destination yet. We haven't been on the island long enough for it to like recalibrate, but we still should be able to follow the old ones from Wano. So they were on Wano for enough time that all three got to a new position, and they haven't been on Egghead long enough for them to realign. So they're still pointing in the directions of the next islands. And Vegapunk's like, that one. That's where we'll go. That's the way Elbaf is. And Luffy and Usopp are like, what? Hold up a minute. Elbaf? We've been dreaming of going to the Island of the Giants. And I looked this up. Chapter 115 to 129 was Little Garden. That was when Dory and Broggy were first introduced, and when we had the mention and like the call of Elbaf. And Usopp made his Warrior of the Sea statement there. You know, that's what he's going to be. We have to go to Elbaf now. There is not a chance we have come nearly 1,000 chapters later, and Oda's going to go, yeah, I'm going to keep teasing Elbaf, but we're not going to go to it. Not a chance. This could almost just be like the warm-up arc for Elbaf for there to be the giant like war kickoff there. Because like all of O'Hara's research is there, Saul's back alive. Like there's so much riding on Elbaf that like they have to be going there, and Luffy and Usopp are just like dying to go. So now that they know that direction's Elbaf, I'm fairly certain we're going in that direction. But we see that like Vegapunk is starting to plan out now how are they going to escape, and there's a bit of a tension between Stussy and Lucci. She's like, just stop staring at me, you know, just leave me alone. But he says, you know, luckily your ship and Vega Force 1 are up in the Labosphere with us. So even though we're locked down, we've got your ship, we've got Vega Force 1. The problem is where the island is, or where they are, their lovely little map drawing here, they're stationed on like this side of the island, and they need to go northeast, which is like directly opposite the other end of the island. So we need to get your ship and Vega Force 1 stationed here to the other side of the island, which is fine and can be done. But the problem is we can't then get past the shield, but then when the shield drops, Vega Force 1 can only carry us so far in the airfield of Egghead. We are only able to fly so far before we get out of range, and Vega Force 1 just cuts out. And Frankie's like, oh, that's not a problem at all. I'll just, you know, coup de burst. We can fly the ship 1 kilometer once Vega Force 1 stops flying, so we get even further ahead. And he's like, my word, your ship can fly a straight kilometer just like that. We'll go with that plan then. And he's like, how is it powered? It's like, oh, powered through cola. He's like, cola? Frankie just, you know, making the world's famous scientist just blow his mind out. But, you know, Atlas says that there's a very well thought out plan. You know, there's still the problem, the Frontier Dome. We got to get past. And York's just like, you'll never get the password from me. They'll get the password. But Vegapunk starts to be like, you know, don't underestimate the great Vegapunk, and he begins to hack away with Atlas. And we see a little flashback quickly of Vegapunk saying to Lilith, you're going to be in charge now. You're the command of Vega Force 1. Leave it to you. So Lilith, Luffy, Frankie, and Bonnie are rushing to the ship and Vega Force 1 to then move them to the other side, because they're saying, look, we don't know when that barrier is going to drop, but we need to be ready for it. So we need to move Vega Force 1 and the Sunny now to be ready. But the problem is, when it does drop, we will then be very vulnerable to the enemy fire, like all those ships and all the firepower they have. And Lilith's just like, oh, you know what, well, honestly, to tell you the truth, I've never been off this island before, so I'm kind of excited to get off. And it's like, whoa, well, I'm not in for a picnic, you know, like it's going to be a rough and bumpy ride. But Luffy's obviously got other concerns, saying that he's really going to miss the food. He's got a massive rucksack, probably full of food. And Bonnie's saying the same. I'm going to miss the food. He should be bringing some pizzas. And Luffy's like, oh no, don't worry about it. There's cheese and stuff on the ship. Sanji will whip us something up. And Bonnie, in just a very happy mood, says, oh, what a great man. Skilled at cooking and strong in battle. Has Bonnie got a thing for Sanji? So clearly, Bonnie has left the room of Kuma's memories, having seen what she saw, has joined the fight, and at some point has seen how Sanji is so skilled in combat and now like equally a cook. Now she's kind of a big fan. But Luffy's like, it's so weird. Why are you in such a good mood? It was all last night. You were just like crying. That's all you did. She was like, I wasn't crying. Come on. But we jump back to the Marines now. So all the ships are just lined up, just ready. And we have St. J. Garcia and Kizaru saying that Lucci's made contact. We know what the picture is like inside now. We know what's happening. Straw Hat, he was just talking arrogantly. We believe that they don't have any control of the situation, but it doesn't change the fact that they are like cornered. He seems like they have something, but it still doesn't change that fact. And Jay Garcia is the one to come up with the idea, saying the Frontier Dome is a laser-based system. You're a light human. It might be possible for you to just dip through, turn into light. And Kizaru's like, oh, there's just an issue though. There's one guy stationed here to guard the dome who is a friend of mine. And Jay Garcia's like, just ignore them, just inconvenience. And he's like, oh, I can't ignore a man who's determined to fight for his duty. I'll go against my ideals. So we're getting some more of their ideas. We know each admiral has their own sort of brand of justice. So Kizaru is weirdly the most flexible. He's not as rigid as like Aokiji, and well, Aokiji's not really rigid. Aki is more rigid. Aokiji was very chill, but nevertheless, he's still saying he can't fight. But the problem comes in when he says it's like Sentomaru, and at the moment I assault, the moment I were to leave, he would just give the order for the Mecha Sea Beasts, for the pacifistas, to start firing and lay waste. And the casualties would be enormous. And Jay Garcia is like, right, this is just getting complicated now. It's getting too serious. Do we know where the power plant is? And Kizaru's putting down the paperwork saying, yep, here is all the information that Lucci sent over to us. Just there. He really is a cunning fellow. This is all the info we needed. So immediately, battle stations kick in. Everyone's ready to fire. We see all those new vice admirals around saying, tell the people with the Roku Shikis, the 6 powers, to get into like battle stations to be ready. CP0, we need to free those agents. We need to get all the bombs, units ready, aim for the sea beasts and the weapons, And just as Luffy, Frankie, and all them at the Sunny, and Luffy's just loving the Sky Islands, like the clouds, they arrive there. Kizaru activates his Yata no Kagami, the mirror. He's just like, boom, and immediately dashes through the entire line of ships, all the sea beasts, onto the Fabrio stratum, and we see like Sentomaru's ready, calls him uncle, in a great defensive position, and gives the order immediately, seeing that Kizaru's on the way, saying, right, all pacifistas, obliterate the enemy. And Sentomaru's like, my defense is like the strongest in the world, and just catches Kizaru's fucking light kick just right there. And as it's caught, we see Luffy's like face of grimace, saying, someone very strong is coming. And that is where we end the chapter. So it officially releases on Sunday. We had the holiday last weekend, but the chapter got released. So this comes out Sunday. It doesn't say there's a break. So next week we will find out why Luffy is so afraid, what's actually going to happen now. The assault has begun. Kizaru is on the island and is able to move through the frontier dome with what looks to be no real issue. Well, let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching. I will see you later.